Well, thank you everybody for spending most of your Saturday here, and I hope for good reason. And in less than, and can everybody see and hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, and
Yes,
I
we
hope
can.
awesome. So I want to just extrapolate some of the key points and then put them into a more practical session. So Destiny, Fikayo, and Afam have said very important things. And one of the first things that I must say, and I think it was Moturaya who mentioned it first, that, and Destiny also echoed that point, that, when you're applying to these things, there is no shame at all in asking for help. So it's when, the saying is that you should learn from experience, right? But the saying doesn't say it has to be your own experience. So some people have to fail first before they learn the right thing. So you can avoid those errors, and some of them easily avoidable ones, by reaching out to people who are either currently doing that program or have done it in time past. And a very good example for me will be, so there was a Nigerian, the first Nigerian who ever did the MLF, Chinedu Iyenetu Jeffrey. I randomly reached out to him on LinkedIn. And, in addition to all the scholarships that we all know, there was a particular one which actually just helps you with, like, living expenses, which he got. And it wasn't anywhere online, and that was very useful, because just by reaching out to him, and he was very excited that, another Nigerian was reaching out to him, and he was happy to share. But the one thing that you don't want to do, right, is that you don't want to ask any of these people. Chinedu, for instance, is a senior associate at LLM, and I can imagine is a very busy person. You don't want to ask any of them questions that Google can easily answer. Asking somebody how many colleges are there in Oxford, that's a matter that Google can answer. So you absolutely don't want to waste people's time. You want to show a Fikayo or Destiny or Afam that you've at least done, the minimum, by researching those courses, those scholarships. For instance, you want to reach out to Mutraya and you're like, sorry, what scholarship did you get again? And this is probably on our LinkedIn. Even if she didn't make a post about it, it's probably, in our bio. So for me, I've been mentored by so many people from a distance. And it wasn't because I even went into their DM. Really, some of the information that I need are already in their bio, and I can see the name of the scholarship. So, and then I just start researching about the scholarship. And if I hit a wall, I can then reach out to them and say, you know what, I've been doing A, B, C, and D. And I was just hoping that you can look at this essay. The person is even impressed, that you have gone, that length. So let me just quickly share my screen, and then I'll get right to it. So the first thing that you must know, and a lot of times, in my opinion, like, the reason why mentorship is so important is so that you can essentially start from where your mentor stopped. One good example will be, I don't expect that any of the people on this platform don't want you to attain the heights that they've attained. My dream especially is for you to surpass them. So there are very silly mistakes, that a few people that I've been speaking to made, that all of you on this platform can easily avoid. One of them is, if you're applying to Cambridge or Oxford, your experience in Oxford is not getting into the Faculty of Law or the business school. The bulk of your experience sometimes, and mostly, is like the college that you get into. So you have to, that's a very big part of, like, the decision. So most people write their cover letter and their CV, fantastic. And then they just, do any, mini, money, more, and then choose a college. We always joke that, I know somebody who said that she picked the college because it rhymed with her surname. You don't want to do that, right? So absolutely, do your research about the college. So you don't want to just, and this is another reason why you want to be intentional about picking a college. So for instance, it was after I got into Oxford that I realized that Balliol College has a scholarship specifically for Nigerians who are coming to study the BCL or the MLF at Oxford. Now, that is information that is good, right? And, for somebody who prides himself as like the information miner, I was actually quite disappointed at myself that I didn't know that until I joined. So you want to absolutely know these opportunities. Now, the easiest and fastest way to know what scholarships. So, okay, let me move to the next slide. So the factors, in my opinion, that will determine the choice of college. So, can you hear me? Can everybody hear me, please?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. Hello.
Can hear you.
Hear you.
Okay. Yes. I was saying the factors that determine the choice of college is one, funding. And funding is a very big part of this, because one of the fastest way that I found, for instance, is through the faculty's website. So if you went on the Oxford Faculty of Law's website, and this applies to every other program, right? If you go on the Oxford Faculty of Law's website, you would find a portion of the website that tells you, scholarships, and then you can filter the program specifically that you're doing. So whether it's the BCL or it's the MLF, and then you can further filter it by including where you're from, what region. So you can put Africa in that. And then you can go specifically to the sponsor, but you don't want to do that because you really just want to get as many scholarships that apply to you as possible. Now, the fantastic thing about the website, and I don't know if other faculties do this, is that it tells you what scholarships are available for Africans, even in different colleges. So instead of like going to all 44 colleges and checking for which scholarships apply to you or that you're eligible for. So through the faculty has done a great job, collating those scholarships into one. Now, most of the scholarships are automatic, like Moturayo said. The AFOX one, if you fit the criteria, you'd get a message to provide additional information. But then guess what? Another fantastic thing that I found out when I got here is that you can actually email individual colleges, because some faculties will take forever to look through your application and then send your application across the colleges. So this colleague of mine, who is, super smart, emailed different colleges asking if they've now received the application, because she's been on their website and she knows that she qualifies for this particular scholarship, right? And the reply she got initially was that, oh, the Faculty of Law hasn't sent over our application, but once they do, they're going to check our requirement against that scholarship. Now, they already have a candidate in mind. So that was like a super hack that I found. Now, so funding, I talked about funding. I don't want to overflog the issue. So you already get the gist. Now, as to accommodation and size, now that's actually a very huge one as well, right? Now, then as to funding, the other theory that I have in my mind, is contestable, but in my opinion, I feel the older the college, the richer, right? So you can also do your research along those lines, that the older the college, the richer. You're already eligible for all the faculty scholarships anyway. So you want to also augment that with your choice of college. So you want to see what colleges have scholarships specifically for your program or for your region. Then as to accommodation and size, now this is one reason why so a college like Brasenose is fantastic for those who are studying law. It has one of the largest law libraries, and I'll talk about that in the facilities. But it's a very small college, so you are likely not going to get accommodation. But if you care about like the library and the other things that it offers, accommodation can be sorted. So it's a problem and it can be fixed. And one of the ways that my current colleagues at Oxford, and I think somebody isn't muted. So please kindly mute your mic. One of the ways, and a smart way, I would say that some of my colleagues currently, Precious, please can you mute your mic? One of the ways that my colleagues at Oxford sorted that issue is that if you don't get an accommodation with your college, you can email all for the 3 other colleges, telling them that you have a place in Oxford, but your college doesn't have accommodation for you. And if they have spare, accommodation, or if you can be on the wait list. And that was what my friend and colleague Sheon did. And she got 4 additional accommodation, and she had to choose between Exeter and the rest of it. So that's something that a lot of the people who are here now also didn't realize, and some other person that I know didn't get accommodation until 4 weeks into lectures. And that can be very stressful on top of like all the other stress that Oxford brings with it. So if you don't get accommodation on time, you want to immediately start emailing other colleges for that one. Then for facilities, like colleges like St. John, they're very rich and modeling, they have all the things you can think of, like there's, so your community here is called like the MCR, and then, certain other colleges have, because they are rich, right? Again, the older the college, the richer. So they have, facilities that you would ordinarily have to pay an extra amount for. So if those things are important to you, then you have to look at that. Then, community, when you go on each college's website, you find, which colleges have more, colored people, or is more diverse than the other ones. And then you find community there as well. And you can speak to existing or current students to find that. Now, access is just the point about, if you need any access requirement, that's a very big thing here. Access, for people who are disabled in any form or can't, you want to find the college which best, can suit your requirements. So I'm not going to overflog the issue. I think the most important thing here is that you should absolutely look for, go to your faculty's website, and then go to the scholarship portion of it and use the filters to get the scholarship that apply to you mostly or specifically. And then you can also just apply for the other ones. And remember the other lady who, while the admission came and, we were all just waiting. Most people were waiting until July for funding decisions to be made. She wasn't waiting, right? She was being proactive and was emailing those colleges because she had done her research, finding out, if they've received the application, because she thinks that she absolutely qualified for those scholarships. So that's also a very important one. So here I talked about this. So for Cambridge, I'm sure the same principles apply. So I've put the link there for you to check out. Now for your CV and your cover letter. Now I'm sorry. Please, Nancy. Okay. So this is very important, and I know people, all the speakers have spoken, and not everybody on this call. And as you can imagine, not everybody on this call, graduated top of their class, and you don't want to leave here feeling even more demotivated than you joined. So I want to tell you that, first of all, you have to know what programs only accept first class graduates. So the BCL at Oxford, only takes first class, and then the MCL at Cambridge only takes first class graduates. So to be honest, unless you want to make a case for extenuating circumstances why you are an A student, you didn't do, for instance, and there are examples, right? So Kenneth Okwo, I know, didn't make a first class in undergraduate, although he made a first class at the law school and was the best student there. Again, you see, they can bend these rules. So he was still able to make a case that he's a very excellent person. And that rule as to you must have a first class in your undergrad didn't matter because he got into the MCL anyway. So you see that you are just really making a case that by choosing me, you're not making a mistake. I'm an excellent person. So that is so that means somebody who didn't have a first class, I'm sure, would have gotten into the BCL in the past. For instance, they didn't have a first class but graduated top of their class, or didn't graduate top of their class but won so many academic awards. And that's what you want to show off in the first 3 lines of your CV. You just want to write those awards, that you made it to one. Doesn't matter. Look at these scholarships that I won. I won the Shell Award for blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to show you a sample CV. So that is what you want to, that's the story, And as Destiny said, they want to be sure that if we admit this guy, he's going to go on to do fantastic things. And that is the kind of candidate that they want. So that you didn't make a first class. Some people didn't, all these CEOs who didn't even go to college at all, and they're doing fantastic things. So that's the logic. The presumption is rebuttable for a first class graduate. So you have to do more work for them to then conclusively reason that, oh, even if you didn't have a first class, you still do great things. So it's just that it's easier to make that, because a first class is like a baby, like a GPA that you nurtured from first year to 500 level. I'm sure most of you know, that it's, as much as people like to dismiss it, it says something about, the candidate, that you're very disciplined, you're also very consistent, that because you treated it as a marathon rather than a sprint. So it tells a lot of story, whether you like it or not. But you want to also say that, showcase that in the other aspects of your life, which may not be great, but you're excellent in other portions. So for instance, there was a gentleman who went to Ife, who made a 2-2 from Ife, but got into Harvard anyway. And how did he do it? He used to be research assistant to Professor Oluwaseun Ayansola, and he had all these amazing papers that they had written together. So that already shows, that's a story of excellence. And I think that is what, Harvard and the rest of, and even Oxford to a large extent, because a friend of mine was representing Oxford, I think Oxford Dictionary, Oxford University Press, in a case, and it was a Nigerian who was suing Oxford because the lawyer in Nigeria had relied on an Oxford definition, and he had lost a case, and he was now blaming Oxford for it. Very interesting. And he represented Oxford in that case. Now he reached, after the case, he did very well, and the client, being Oxford, was very impressed with him. And he said, oh, I've always wanted to go to this school, but I don't have a first class. And they said you should absolutely apply, you should definitely say X, Y, and Z. And once you've applied, let me know, and that they can put in a great word. You see, so it's really all about the story of excellence. So I've included in this slide what I think a great CV, and you can also compare it with the McKinsey and the BCG template that Fisayo mentioned. A personal summary, makes a very pungent and a very solid case. And when I share a sample CV now, you're going to see, I think I should absolutely do that, rather than just so that you can imagine. Let me share my screen. Just one moment. Okay, just give me a second. Yes, here we go. Okay, now look at this CV. Yeah, those of you who wrote WAEC, you definitely know Siroma Chukwuma. Now, this is your name, first name first, middle name, and then your last name. So Siroma has to be your first name. So if it's Fikaya Akeredolu Oluwaseun Ayansola and not Ayansola Oluwaseun, except you start with your first name and then a comma, and I'm sorry, your last name and then the comma and what of that. Well, they don't need to know your specific address, Lagos, Nigeria, whatever. Now, the summary. Now, this is somebody who is applying for, so this is definitely, don't worry, this is my ish. So applying for an MLF, that is a finance, or you're applying for an MCL. So you want to show off, corporate law, or you're applying for systems engineering, you're applying for anything at all, right? Again, this is probably very important for people who think that, they don't have the grades that once Oxford just sees your 5.0 over 5.0. They don't even want to see anything else. They're like, that's our guy. You want to then make a case for why you're doing an MCL. You don't have a first class, but you've advised almost every country or every finance client in Nigeria for the past 5 years. So work experience is the proxy, in my opinion, for like the grade. So because, and then your cover letter or your statement of purpose, you then have to tell that story. So if I were you, what I would be saying is that if you admit me, I'm going to enrich the conversations that you'd have in this class, because I'm bringing emerging markets perspective that's for the past 5 years, and look at how I dealt with all these interesting issues around electronic signature during COVID, and and all of these cross-border deals and whatnot. So you want to tell that story. So you're already starting from your CV. And again, if you check Oxford's CV, they don't really care. That's why it's about 300 words. So it really doesn't do much. Most of the people who got into these programs, I mean, they definitely didn't write a mind-blowing cover letter or personal statement as you would expect for US schools. So you can start with that. Now, under your law school or your undergraduate, now most of you, even if it was like a bursary, you probably got scholarship from your state government, you got scholarship from, like Shell, and some of you, it was your birthright. You got scholarship from all of these things, and you're putting it maybe way down in the achievement section. You want to put it ahead of. So the person is already saying scholarship award. So you're already distinguishing yourself. And those are the buzzwords that these guys, because they receive thousands of applications. So you want to just show off excellence. And it's in scholarship, it's in honors, it's in those keywords, and you ranked this and that. So you want to do that. Now, in your professional experience, somebody said that if you worked for BCG, PwC, KPMG, McKinsey, you don't have to worry about this long line that I put under this one, because every employer knows these, like the school knows this employer, because it's a global employer of labor. And they also are very great for your CV. They feel if you were good enough for McKinsey or for Bank of America, you're definitely good enough for Oxford. So, but if you worked in an organization where that is very local, and it doesn't enjoy that international presence, then it's very useful for you to say, what it does. So even if Piggyverse is Piggyverse in Nigeria, or Steers, or everybody knows them in Nigeria, and if you tell anybody, you introduce yourself that you work with like Kuda in Lagos, you're definitely a big boy, right? But Oxford doesn't know Kuda. So you want or what's the other one that got acquired recently by Stripe? You want to then express that, like it's the first to market fintech company, with 2,000 or 2 million users. And then the person already know, like, this is a big, but by just writing CUDA and expect that the admission officer, you expect them to just know it's a big deal. And you want to have a line under that applying for. So this master's, I probably want to just show off like the trade law experience, things that require a little bit more research, and then you want to like just emphasize certain things so that we can see them through. Now, now in this case, as I'm sure you can see, I didn't bother explaining who ran merchant bank is or KPMG or the rest of the other guys, because I expect that, like the employers will know. Then you want to also just do this under your select achievements and this, and then publications, if necessary, will do that. Now, if you look through like this is the one frank thing that I want to tell everybody on this call. At the end of this call, you may realize that you are not ready to apply for the master's this year, and that is very fine. And you have to be very frank with yourself. Now you can apply anyway for two reasons. You may want to apply just because you want to know what the process is like, so that when you're doing it, when you're really ready, you are not doing it for the first time. You know, your muscle memory has already been built. You know that, oh, like, I've done this, I've filled this form before. You may decide to apply. I mean, it's under 50K. You can even apply for application fee waiver. So it's not really taking anything from you financially. Because you feel like how to sell yourself, you probably need between now and next year to do something fantastic that is going to blow the minds of Harvard and Cambridge and Oxford. And that's totally fine, right? You know, and then you can also realize from this that, oh, maybe you've been doing it the wrong way. So you have to like change your strategy. And that's also something I want you to take away, right? So sometimes I go way in advance to check out the requirements of all these universities and all these programs, you know, just so that I can see what the requirements are, and then you can start ticking off the boxes. So I know some of you on this call are undergraduates, and that's very fantastic. So you can already go on the MCL or the PhD or the Oxford or the Columbia or LSC or any school, you know, many of these schools may also not be the leading university on your subject matter, right? So you also want to do that in your field. If you say you went to Harvard for it, they'll just be looking at you that, I mean, like, why would you go to Harvard for that, you know, subject matter? So you may also want to, you know, for instance, for arbitration, everybody knows maybe like Geneva Institute of this, it's a better school for that program, or you want to do international trade, or you want to study international law. Leiden is a very solid, and it makes sense because it's in Netherlands, it's in The Hague, just very close to the ICJ. So your choice of school, don't get too carried away by all the people on this call. You know, I don't know all the, you know, this is just a very closed network of friends, right? But the other factors that should determine where you go to school is the proximity to the job centers. So a friend of mine who got into Oxford and also got into Stanford and wants to do tech, it was a no-brainer. It was going to Stanford because Stanford is in the heart of, you know, it's in Silicon Valley. And immediately after some of his professors are coming from Silicon Valley. So the proximity to the job center is also a factor. So you shouldn't go to Oxford just because, you know. So he didn't even bother coming to Oxford. He went to Stanford and is doing a master's in law and tech. Absolutely brilliant. So if you want to also work in DC for the World Bank, you know, you're better off maybe going to the US and not coming to the UK. If you want to work in London, you know, so many other factors. If immigration is also what is driving you, you want to take all of this into consideration. So I thought I should just mention that. Now, the final thing on my slide is the personal statement. I think all the speakers did an excellent job talking about personal statement. So I wouldn't overflog that either. So what I would just mention is that, sorry, let me just share this. I will not show you a sample cover letter. I think some of them have promised you that. So a personal statement or a statement of purpose. Now, in my experience, this was said time and time again, the first paragraph has to be very captivating. You know, it has to be, you have to just have the person. And if, for those of us who did like debates in school, you know that sometimes, like, once you lose people in the first few seconds, like, it's very hard to get them back. So you want to kill them, you know, with like the first few lines. Now, the other thing that you want to do when you're really stating a clear purpose is you want to show off your knowledge of the program. And that would be, and how do you do that? You want to show that, you know, this program, you know, that since, you know, the MLF was designed in 2010, you know, you want to show off that you know this program. Like, in fact, if you've been following this program all your life. And then in addition to that, and I think one of the speakers also mentioned this, that I think it was Destiny who mentioned that you want to also show off like the faculty. And by faculty, I mean like the professors who are taking that course, that like, I mean, who like corporate insolvency, like one of the leading professor of corporate insolvency teaches here at Oxford, and like if you want to do solvency and restructuring, like where else than to go to the source, like they say, right? So you want to say things like that for this particular program, what attracted and what you assume attract most candidates to the program, and specifically that particular course, is because of this professor. So you want to say that. The next thing is, so what exactly piqued your interest? Did it just come out of the blue? So for finance, for me, I wrote about how, during my internship, at a DFI, I worked on a project, so imagine working on a project like Lekki Link Bridge. And I know it was Aluko, I know everybody who did that, but just imagine telling a story like that whenever you're driving on that bridge, and you know how it takes about 1 hour to go around before, and now you can travel the bridge in under 5 minutes. That's kind of impactful work that attracted you, or that drew you to develop or be a family business that, your family ran a poultry and you've always been interested about the risk, so one of the major risks that you faced, and that you thought, oh, why don't we mitigate this by insurance? And you then abstracted the idea to some other very present risk in Nigeria and how this program is going to help. You can be professional experience, or you identified a gap in the market that like nobody wants to give money to any African country because of lack of trust, and that by studying this masters, you think you can plug that trust gap, whatever. Then the next thing is, then you go on to the fitness for the course, because a lot of your cover letter is really about, some of it is about what you've done, right? And then how the curriculum is going to help you build the skills that you need to be the best professional in that particular course. That while you have, some appreciable level of modeling skills, as a lawyer, by doing the law and finance program, or by doing any other program, that you're then going to acquire the financial analysis skills to make that transition. That's sometimes you can write a more compelling story, which is probably not what you're going to do with that master's, but that is the most compelling story to tell, because it just makes sense. For some of you, it's probably just to jackpot, right? But you cannot tell that the admission officer that this thing is just, so you have to definitely tell them the kind of things that they want to hear, that like by doing this masters, you're going to learn the skill, and then it would help you to achieve that future goal. Then the last thing, yes, I'll stop sharing my slides. The last thing I should say, as in rounding off, is that sometimes it's just super not to follow the bandwagon. Sometimes you can start to take on an opportunity right now just because you want to be eligible for certain scholarships. So I know somebody who resigned their work. I'm not advising you to do that, to start teaching in their university. And after they did that for about a year or two, they were then eligible for the Fulbright, because the Fulbright is mostly for people in the academia, right? So sometimes when, again, adopting the tip that I gave earlier about looking in advance for the requirements of this scholarship, even if Moturaya said that, like she just randomly got this email from AFOX, but the truth is that, like, she fits like the kind of candidates that they're looking for. And some candidates, like a friend of mine who just got this scholarship, she's the first recipient of the scholarship, like they just reached out to her, talking about, accounting for luck and blessing, if you like. But again, she submitted a solid application such that without additional information, it was good enough for a scholarship. So that's also something you should have in mind when you're writing. So you want to then make your personal statement good enough, assuming that you would not have additional information, for scholarships, like that's the opportunity that some other scholarships give you, that they are just going to make that decision based on your personal statement alone, then you have to also put that in mind when you're writing your personal statement. You want to also show, if it's a need-based application, you want to put some need in there, just to show that, I mean, like, I absolutely still, even if I don't have all the means in the world, but I'm an excellent person and I deserve to be here, regardless. So you want to put some of that in your personal statement, on your statement of purpose, so that if the decision was being made solely on the basis of your statement of purpose, then you will still be considered. So, gentlemen, I think that's all that I have for you. If there are any questions, I'll take them. And if there are none, we will then move on to the Q&A.